Okay, we'd like to welcome you to 7 practical ways that you can help others recover from pornography addiction with Dr. Adam Moore. Dr. Moore is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He is Assistant Director at Brigham Young University's Comprehensive Clinic and Clinical Director of Utah Valley Counseling, an outpatient mental health clinic that primarily focuses on treating pornography and sexual addiction and the trauma that the partners of addicts experience. Dr. Moore has taught at Brigham Young University, Utah Valley University, and Argosy University. He is a recipient of a research award from the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy and is currently President-elect of the Utah Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. We'd like to welcome Dr. Moore to our class.
All right. Wow. This is a lot of people. So yeah, please, I don't want to die, and so please, let's make some aisles so if it catches on fire, I can run out. That would be great. All right, very good. So, we're going to get plugging along here. Practical ways. Now, my suspicion here is that the majority of you in this room are here because somebody you care about is either already involved with pornography, maybe to the level of addiction, or you've got somebody you're worried about that might be moving in that direction. And if I think about all of the painful human experiences that exist, I probably am not aware of all of them, but the feeling of helplessness, I think, is one of the most painful. Wanting to be able to do something and feeling like you can do nothing. And some of you may feel that way. Some of you may feel completely helpless when it comes to your loved one and pornography use. Okay? So we're going to try to alleviate some of that today. However, we need to differentiate between two important concepts as we get going here. And that is helplessness, and the other concept is surrender. And I want to teach you the difference between them. But first I'm going to ask a question. In the back, can you hear me? Raise your hand. All right, thank you. Some of you in the middle thought you were in the back. So I appreciate it. Okay. So when I'm talking about helplessness, this is a word that for me, when I think about it, it's a state of mind that's demotivating. Helplessness makes me not want to do anything. Okay? You experience low effectiveness, you're trying to accomplish something, but you can't get anything done, so you just give up. You get depressed, you get angry, you feel like there's no point in trying. Now, helplessness is inactive, and it's problematic, because if you do nothing, then nothing changes. But surrender is a different concept. And surrender is a concept that is talked about in 12-step recovery, and it's a concept that I think is amazing. And let me tell you what surrender is about. It's making choices. Surrender is not just sitting back and doing nothing. That's helplessness. Surrender is actually about making choices, but then letting go of the outcome of those choices. Does that make sense? I cannot control what happens once I've made my choices. So instead of worrying about it, staying up at night, wringing my hands, I'm going to surrender and let go. Now in 12-step they say you're going to surrender this to God. Let go and let God is the phrase that is used. So my first invitation to you today is to come to terms with the fact that you cannot control whether your loved one gets into recovery or stays in recovery from pornography addiction. And if you worry about that every day and try to control it, you will go insane. Okay? And so I'm going to teach you some things on how to not go insane later as part of this presentation. So my invitation is make choices, offer help, and then let go of the outcome. And that will help keep you sane in this process. All right. So we're going to go with 7. Why 7? People always ask me, why not like 9? And I don't know. I started trying to write the 8th one, and like my computer blew up. So I don't know what happened. It's crazy. All right. First concept. Lead with the truth. Okay? So let's talk about what this means. As human beings, we all are connected to stories. We are storytellers. We tell stories about everything, why people do things that they do. We tell stories to explain phenomena. We tell stories to educate, to entertain, all those types of things. We are storytellers. That's what we are as human beings. Now, stories are powerful. And they're powerful because they provide a road map to an end state or a goal. The story helps us explain how you get from point A to point B. It's just important for us as human beings. And the other thing that stories do for us is they take our experiences that are in our heads and they make them real. Okay? So I'm going to tell you two really short stories. You can sort of look at the difference between these two. We're going to talk about how storytelling plays into helping people into recovery. Story number one. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who dreamed of becoming a professional athlete. Everyone told him he should give up his dream, that it was impossible. But he worked hard every day. He never gave up. He believed in himself, and eventually he was drafted into the NFL. The end. Cool story, right? There's a bunch of movies just like that story. They're a lot longer than that story. Okay? Now that's a story you and I can buy into. We can get behind. Because it makes sense. There's a roadmap there, right? The end state is achieving your dreams, whatever they are. And the roadmap in this particular story is work hard, never give up, believe in yourself. Stories like this have power. They have power to motivate people to action, especially when they're true stories. Because they tap into something about being human, about overcoming. Now, let me tell you a second story. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who wanted all of his dreams to come true. He never worked at it. He didn't believe in himself. But magically, one day, a helicopter came to his home, took him away to a palace where he's crowned king of the realm. He was fanned and fed grapes all day and got whatever he wanted. The end. Now, why is that funny? It's because it doesn't make any sense. We don't connect with a story like that. It doesn't ring true to the human experience. The stories that you tell people are either going to have power and give you credibility, or they're going to have no power and give you zero credibility. And when you're trying to help somebody get into recovery, you need credibility and you need power. So I'm going to teach you how you're going to do that through the stories that you tell. A false or an uninformed story, okay, or just a guess, will not help people. And this is a big mistake that people make. Their family member comes to them and says, look, I've got a pornography problem, I need help. And then you just pull out whatever idea pops into your head. And it's well-intentioned, but the problem is most of the time it's not based in truth. It's just based in a guess. That story will have no power to help, and then you start to lose credibility. That person will start to say, you know what, every time I go to them, they say something weird and it doesn't work. I'm going to stop asking them questions. I'm going to go find someone else. You don't want that to happen, okay? So we need to tell true stories. This is too much to carry, so we're going to move this around a little bit here. So the first thing you have to do is become educated about the truth about addiction and recovery. That's what you're doing here today. You're learning what is true about recovery and about addiction. When you're armed with truth, then the stories you tell will ring true and they'll have power to motivate people. That's one of the things that happens when people come into my therapy office. I can tell them everything that's happened in their life up until that point because addiction is a common story. And I'm right 90% of the time because it's so universal. And people go, well, this guy obviously knows my life maybe better than I do. I better pay attention to what he has to say. And that's what you want to have happen in your life when you're trying to help people. So from today forward, okay, you cannot unhear what I'm about to tell you. It is too late. From today forward, you're no longer going to guess. You're not going to throw out an idea and hope it sticks. Okay? You're going to speak only truth about addiction and recovery. If you don't know something, then don't guess. Just say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to find out. Let's do some homework and figure it out. Because then people will come to know you as someone who is a truth teller. So you're going to lead with truth, you're going to speak truth, and you're not going to guess. All right, next one. Facilitate healthy motivation. Now this is really important. Everything's really important, right? I'm going to say that on every slide. This is really important because if you don't have motivation, you're not going to do anything. Okay? obviously. And one of the things that's interesting about motivation is that we as human beings, we tend to have kind of a skewed perspective on how motivation works. And it's mostly skewed by the Greeks. Not all Greeks, but a segment of Greeks. They believe in this principle called hedonism. And hedonism says that human motivation is about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And that's it. That's what we do. We just try to make sure we feel good and not feel bad. But that doesn't explain marathons, my friends. So motivation is a little bit more complex than just the carrot that you dangle out in front of someone or the stick that you threaten them with. And sometimes when you want to motivate somebody, you do that. You go, okay, look, here's this thing that you probably like. I'm going to hang it out here, and if you do what I want, then I'm going to give you this carrot, and everything will be great. Or I have this stick, and it's really painful if I hit you with it, so do what I want, or I'm going to hit you. Okay? That's how we tend to motivate people, because we don't understand how motivation works. People even do this in recovery. They'll say, like a parent or a spouse or something, they'll say, hey, if you stop looking at pornography, I will give you a new motorcycle. I don't know, something, right? Or they'll say, if you look at pornography again, here's all the horrible stuff that's going to happen to you. All right? And you already understand this. That doesn't actually create lifelong recovery and change. People even try to motivate themselves like this. Okay, if I can string together 3 months of sobriety from pornography, then I'll finally buy myself, whatever, that thing that I've been wanting forever. So, let me teach you about how motivation actually works so you can start to leverage it. Now, this is a difficult concept. It's actually kind of complicated. I'm simplifying it the best I can. You may still walk away going, I kind of get it, but I'm still confused. Stick with me over time. I'm going to continue to educate more about motivation and try to bring it down to a level that normal people like me and you can understand, because this is based on a lot of science that's a bit complex. So, motivation, it's about 3 things: truth, value, and control. And they've replicated this in rat studies and in human studies and thousands of studies to realize that people are motivated to know what's real, to get things that are important to them, and to have influence over their world. That's what motivates us to do things. So what we want to do when we're helping someone get into recovery is we want to help leverage these motivators to help them work through recovery. So I'm going to give you a few examples, and we'll get plugging along here. So a truth motivator, now this is what's really interesting. These motivators can help people get into recovery, but they also keep people stuck. And so my take on it is people tend to sort of fall in line with 1 or 2 common motivators, like this is my thing, this is what motivates me. And that's where they land most of the time. We're all motivated by all 3, but people have their favorites. If you can figure out what that is for the person that you care about, you can use that. Okay? So here's a truth motivator that keeps people stuck in addiction. If I tell my parents or my spouse that I'm looking at pornography, I will hurt them. Here's the truth part. I'm not the kind of person who hurts people, so I have to keep it a secret. They're motivated to keep a secret because they're trying to establish something that is real about themselves, and that is, I don't hurt people. Does that make sense? It's an interesting little bit of logic that keeps people stuck. So if you wanted to reverse that and educate somebody in a way that focuses on truth, you could say something like this. It's the secrets that hurt people the most. If you tell the truth, your spouse or parent may feel pain, but it will be less pain than if you intentionally keep secrets from them. If you don't want to hurt people, then don't keep secrets from them. That's a truth motivator, and it changes the frame of reference on whether a person tells the truth or goes into hiding. Let's talk about value. I'll give more examples in a minute. We're going to try to go through these. Value, getting the things that you want, the things that you value. A person might say, this is what keeps them stuck, I value a stress-free life. When life gets stressful, pornography helps me escape from the stress. So because they get stress relief when they do pornography, they're highly motivated to stick with it because it's getting something they value, which is low stress. So a way that you can reverse that and counter that is to say something like this. Your pornography use to temporarily reduce stress is creating much more distress in your life over time. You're undermining your own goal by how you're managing stress. Recovery will help you get out of the cycle and get you more of what you want in the long run. Focusing on value. Okay? This person wants to get certain things, and that's what motivates them. You help them understand that getting into recovery will actually get them what they're looking for in the long run. Maybe a bit difficult in the meantime, but long run they're going to get more of what they want. How about a control motivator? This one is the most difficult to work with, by the way, just so you know. An addict might say, I may be addicted, but I don't want to hear what you have to tell me that I need to do to get better. I'd rather just learn by my own mistakes and fail of my own accord. Sounds like every teenager ever, right? Don't tell me what to do. I don't want a good life. I just want to make all the mistakes I want. Okay? So if you want to reverse that, it's a little tricky, but you could say something like, you're certainly welcome to make your own mistakes. But I imagine that over time, this addiction is going to take away a lot more control and freedom than you even have lost now. Why don't we work together to find something that you feel comfortable doing that actually works and gives you more freedom in the long run? If I'm motivated to have control, then I'm going to pick up on that and I'm going to go, oh, more freedom, more control? Yes, that is exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm more likely to commit to some recovery work than I am if you tell me, it's going to ruin your life and it's really bad. If I'm not a truth-motivated kind of guy and I'm all control, that truth statement is not going to do a lot for me, okay? In terms of motivation, at least. So, I'm going to do one more example of each with a more specific example to kind of help you. I told you, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. So, truth. Ben, I'm going to do some little vignettes here. Ben is a fun-loving 14-year-old boy who accidentally stumbled on pornography when he was 12. He views pornography about 3 times a week, but is afraid to say anything to his parents. He believes they will be angry for not having better self-control, and he thinks, I should be able to fix this on my own. So he's stuck in truth. I'm supposed to be able to do it on my own, and I can't make my parents mad. So that keeps him motivated to hide. So if you're a parent, you could say something like this to Ben. Ben, I realize that you think you have to do everything on your own. The truth is that no one overcomes this alone. It's not your responsibility to protect me and your dad from pain, and you have a right to get help from us. Okay? Those are true statements that can be motivating to get people to do something different. All right, how about value? Kara is a 21-year-old college student who wants more than anything else to feel loved and cared about. She feels awkward in social and romantic relationships, and she reads sexually explicit stories and views pornography as a way to imagine what it would be like to be in a healthy relationship. So, I'm lost, guys. Hold on a second here. Even though it's not real, she gets value out of the fantasy. The value that she gets out of the fantasy keeps her stuck. Okay? So if you're Kara's parent, for example, she's a college student, you might say to her, Kara, it is so hard to feel unloved and not desirable. And I can see that pornography is easy to turn to because it won't ever reject you. However, the fantasy of being loved never compares to the real thing. Let me help you learn how to overcome your fears and be vulnerable in relationships so you can feel real love and real desirability rather than just imagining what it would be like. If she wants real love and real vulnerability and real relationships, then she's going to be motivated to do something about that, if that's what she values. And control. Kevin is a married man who often complains that he is sexually frustrated in his marriage. He uses this complaint to justify his pornography use when his wife is not feeling emotionally connected enough with him to be physically intimate. Kevin doesn't like the idea of his wife controlling whether or not he gets to be sexual. He views pornography to exert control over his own sexuality. So if I'm Kevin's wife, I might say something like this, because Kevin is control motivated here. I don't want people telling me what to do. I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life. So Kevin's wife might say something like, Kevin, you're having a hard time seeing that the more you try to control our sexual relationship, the less influence you actually have. You're losing control over everything as you dig deeper into pornography. I'm willing to help you understand how to help you be interested in intimacy with you, all types of intimacy, but only if you're willing. And that's the statement you have to always add to people who are control effectiveness motivated is, I'm always like, I guess you can if you want, I mean, I'm not going to force you. And they're more likely to, oh yeah, well, let's do it then. You know, but if I get kind of pushy, they're like, no, just because you said, I'm just going to say no. I don't even know what you said, I'm just going to say no anyway. Okay? Also teenagers. Okay? Now, please understand, these approaches don't guarantee that you're going to motivate people to get into recovery, but you're much more likely to have effectiveness with getting people motivated if you understand what motivates them. Not the carrot and the stick, but truth, value, and control. I have a quick question. What time does this end?
12:30.
12:30, okay, tons of time.
35 minutes.
35, here we go. Confront denial. This is the next thing you're going to do. Now remember we talked about human beings loving stories. Denial is inherently a story, or a series of stories. It's permission-giving storytelling. I'm going to say that again. Denial is permission-giving storytelling. It's a story that gives you permission to do something. Okay? So let me tell you how this works. Because you might be asking yourself a question like this. If somebody knows how problematic pornography is, if they understand how much damage it's causing, why would they keep doing it? It makes no sense. Well, denial is one of the reasons that people keep doing it, even though they know intellectually that it's a problem. Because denial is a really powerful way of storytelling. So, here's the thing. When your values, your morals, okay, the things that are important to you, and then your behaviors are out of line with each other, it's not long before you start going crazy. Here's the things I believe, here's the things I'm doing. I'm not in tune with myself. People start to kind of go nuts. So denial is a way that people bridge the gap between their values and their behaviors. They tell a beautiful story that says, well, my values may be over here, however, here's this amazing story, and that's why this behavior is okay. So I'm fine. Okay? That's pretty typical. Now, when people are in addiction, they have no idea they're in denial. Almost all of my therapy clients, I'll say, so tell me what forms of denial that you use, and they'll be like, what? I don't even know what that is, you know? And then I'll give them some examples, and they're like, nah, I don't think I do any of that. And within 2 weeks, they're like, yeah, I do all that, you know? Okay? So I'm going to give you some examples and then how to deal with it, because you're going to hear this. If you're trying to help somebody get into recovery, you're going to start hearing denial statements, and they're going to make no sense to you. They'll make perfect sense to the person in the addiction. They'll make no sense to you. Your first instinct will be to just combat them head on, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What are you thinking? Okay? But here's the thing. If let's say this is like a 20-year-old, that person has, I don't know, 14 years of mental defense mechanisms built up right there for anything you do on a head-on assault. So we've got to kind of go around the back door with this kind of thing. So I'll show you how to do that. So here's some basic forms of denial. Blaming. You know, I wouldn't have to look at pornography if, fill in the blank. It's someone else's fault that I'm doing it. Comparing. You know, I may look at pornography, but at least I don't do that, so I'm probably fine. Okay? Or hopelessness. You know, I just don't think I'm ever going to get better. There's no point in trying. I might as well just give up. That's a form of denial because it gives you permission to keep going. People don't know that's a form of denial, but it is. Or, on the opposite end of things, this is one of my favorites, eternal optimism. Okay? I'll have guys that are, you know, been seeing me in therapy for 6 months, and they'll come in and I'll say, okay, so, you know, how's your sobriety? And they'll say, I'm doing really good. I acted out 12 minutes before coming in to your office, but I feel really positive. I'm going to do it, man. I got this down. And thinking that everything's always great and always optimistic is actually a form of denial because you never give yourself a chance to actually self-evaluate because you're always just like, oh, I'm fine, we're good, all is well. There's a whole bunch of other forms of denial that we'll just start with those today. So, but let me share the most common way that people do denial. It is this sort of little snake, this string or stream of denial mechanisms. And let me show you how it works. A person will be going through life and they're looking on social media websites and doing whatever, and they'll see some kind of sexually provocative image or something. And then they'll look at it and they'll feel triggered sexually, and then they'll say, well, I'm probably fine. I mean, there was no nudity, and it wasn't really that bad. So I'm not going to tell my parent or my spouse, because then they're just going to get up in arms, and we're having a good day, and I don't want to ruin a good day. So I'm just going to keep this one to myself, because it really wasn't that big of a deal. So now we got some permission giving going on. So now they don't make any changes, right? They're just kind of plugging along. And then they might accidentally view pornography, okay? Like, I have guys that do that, you know, they'll say, I'm just going to start clicking random things on the internet and hopefully no pornography comes up, but if it does, it wasn't my fault. Okay, that's another form of denial, okay? Opportunity. And so, I'm fine, I'm okay. So then they'll look at some pornography and say, okay, well, it was only 5 minutes. It wasn't that much. It's not that big of a deal. And I really can't say this because now I kind of crossed over the line, but it's still not that bad because I didn't indulge for 10 hours, and so I'm okay. I'm just going to keep this to myself. I'm going to fix it. Everything's good. Okay, we're good. Right? That leads way then into kind of this spiraling into more pornography. And at some point, the person will then say, I have blown it. I messed up. I crossed into it. I've now spent an hour. I should have said something at the beginning, but I didn't. And now I'm really going to be in trouble, because now I'm going to be in trouble not only for doing it, but for not having said anything when I promised I would, no matter what. So now I really got to go into hiding. And then they'll say something like, I've got to protect my parents or my spouse or whatever from this. This is too much for them to handle. I'm protecting them. I'm doing a noble thing by hiding. Okay? That's the way denial works. And then there's this interesting thing that happens. There's all of this shame going on. And then they say, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to work really hard. I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to be perfect. And I'm going to string 6 months of sobriety together. And then at the dinner table one evening, I'm going to say, by the way, just side note, I probably shouldn't even mention this, but since we're talking about the presidential debate, I might as well say that I did look at pornography 6 months ago. It was just a little bit. It wasn't that much. It was a little much, but not that much. But I just took care of it. Everything's fine now. So don't even worry about it. Okay, what were we talking about? Okay? That's the hope. But guess what? When you're sitting in shame of hiding and lying, it never happens. People don't sit in all this shame and then like magically do all amazing recovery work and string all this sobriety together. That's the most common way that I see denial happening. It's not a one-time thing. It's this long. It sometimes happens over months, sometimes years. Okay? So you're a parent, you're a spouse, you're a family member, you're a friend. What are you going to do? Okay, first thing you need to do, become educated about denial. So go to Google and type in addiction denial mechanisms or something like that. You'll find tons of lists of all the ways that people do denial. Learn about it. Learn to identify it. When you see it, then call it out in kind of a backdoor kind of way. So I'll give you some examples of how you can do that. Because again, denial is really powerful. It keeps people sane, so they're not just going to let go of it the moment you mention something about it. You say, after the last time that you viewed pornography, I wonder what you were telling yourself. Did you know, do you know what you would have to have told yourself in order to give you permission to fall back into it? What was going on in your head? What gave you permission? Now they might say, I don't know, okay? I have no idea, right? And then you can say, well, again, I have a list right here of denial mechanisms. Do any of these sound familiar to you? And once you read through them, usually someone will be like, yep, that one right there, that's what I did. That's exactly what I did. And it's a new concept for people. They're like, I didn't even know I was saying that to myself. Okay? Another thing you could do is kind of tie it to something in your life. You could say, when I eat too many Oreos, too many sleeves of Oreos, I meant to eat one sleeve, I ate 12. And I don't know what happened there. And that is not from my own personal life. I've never done that before since yesterday. So you could say, here's what I tell myself to give myself permission to eat 12 sleeves of Oreos. I wonder if you've ever done anything like that too. It's a little bit of a backdoor. You're making a connection with your own life about it. You could say, now this is interesting too, because sometimes this denial crosses into other areas of life, right? So you can say, I just noticed that you got really angry and yelled, and then you blamed somebody else for your own anger. And I'm wondering if that blaming thing that you do is something you also do with the pornography thing. I wonder if you make it someone else's fault. Suddenly lights are turning on for, I'm like, oh man, I do this in more areas than one in my life. You always want to be calm, you kind of want to be gentle, because when you're calm and you're saying it in a really soft and nice voice, then people don't think that they have to like put all the defenses up and grab the guns and stuff. They're like, oh, they're being nice to me. Whatever they're saying is probably good. And so they're just listening, but then you're sliding in this information, this confrontation in kind of a backdoor kind of way. So eventually, as you start highlighting those, what will happen is people will get used to knowing that you're going to highlight them, and then they'll start picking them up on their own. They'll go, oh, yeah, that's denial. I just did it right there. Okay? All right, here we go. Next one. Begin with active vigilance. The greatest mistake people make, in my opinion, in trying to, stop a pornography habit in their lives is doing what I call passive vigilance. That looks like this. Okay? Passive vigilance. And that is, gosh, I really hope I don't look at pornography again. We'll see what happens. That's what passive vigilance is, okay? And so, because people don't know what to do. Like, how do you stop doing something? How do I not do something? I'll just don't do it. Okay? But there's a little bit of a different twist that we have to take on this, and that's we want to look at active vigilance, okay? I'll tell you a quick story about a trucking company. Trucking company, too many accidents. Drivers are getting accidents, insurance premiums are going through the roof. The company says, okay, we're going to, every driver at the end of this year who has not had an accident, you get $1,000 bonus. Has no impact. Why? Because you're eager to get $1,000, and guess what? Eagerness and safe driving, they don't really mix very well. All right, I'm going to go out there and be really safe. Like that, that's an accident waiting to happen. So what they found was they actually made a change, and they said, okay, you have $1,000 in your bank account, your little work account. As soon as the end of the year rolls around, if you haven't had an accident, you get to keep it. If you get in an accident, you're losing it. So now they're worried about losing something, and so they go into this vigilance mode. Okay, I got to be careful, I don't want to lose it. And not wanting to lose something and safe driving, those are a good fit. They call that regulatory fit. Don't even write that word down, it doesn't matter. Okay? But we want to create a good fit. Now, we could talk another day about later recovery, but early recovery, you're trying to help somebody that's like still acting out regularly. Vigilance is the approach, because vigilance is a good fit with not acting out. Eagerness is a bad fit with not acting out. All right, here we go. I'm going to get recovery. I'm going to do all this cool stuff. That's not a good fit. It's about being cautious early on. It doesn't matter how many good things you're doing. If you're not vigilant, you're still going to get broadsided by the addiction. Now, the mistake that people make is they do passive vigilance. I hope nothing happens. I hope I don't act out. So we're going to talk briefly about active vigilance. Okay? So I'll give you some examples of what active vigilance would look like. Daily accountability. Every day I'm going to tell you how things are going in my life. Not only am I going to tell you whether I've acted out with pornography or not, I'm going to tell you my emotional state, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing to try to stay healthy, I'm going to tell you about my life. I'm going to be accountable, so I know I'm going to tell you every day. That's an important part of active vigilance. A cautious use of media. A lot of guys I work with, and the women, I work with women who are sex addicts as well, pornography addicts, they'll say, you know what, right now in my life there's certain websites I just can't go to. They're not inherently pornographic, but they're dangerous to me, so I'm taking a break from them. That's active vigilance. Cautious use of alone time. You know what? Being alone is one of the hardest things in recovery for two reasons. A lot of people feel abandoned. Even if their spouse or whatever is just going to the store, they still feel like, oh, I've been abandoned, I'm going to die. I mean, that really happens for people. And there's opportunity. So opportunity plus feeling of abandonment, major triggers for relapse. A lot of people will say, I'm not going to be alone for now. It's just too dangerous. Another part of active vigilance is timely trigger reporting. Here's the secret. Here it is. One of the fundamental differences between people who do really well in recovery and people who don't is the length of time between when they were triggered and when they called somebody or never called anybody. The people that do really good work, they feel triggered and they're driving along and it's summer and they see a jogger wearing not a whole lot of clothing on the side of the road and they'll first look and they go, I'm probably fine. Nope, I'm going to make a phone call. And they'll call somebody from their 12-step group, their sponsor, their spouse, their parent, whatever, and say, I don't know if this is going to become a problem, but I just want to let you know that I was triggered and that here's what I'm going to do about it. The power of that trigger begins to diminish because someone else knows, and there's accountability and there's support. That's a huge differentiator. 2 more things: emotional self-awareness and expression. I know how I feel and I can tell you about it. That makes a big difference in recovery. And then course correction after slips. Most people say, okay, well, I know I've looked at pornography 23,000 times, but that was indeed the last time. I'm done. And therefore, I don't really have to do anything because I'm done. I don't got to think about it. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to evaluate anything. So no, that doesn't work. Every time you slip, you have to look and say, what happened? What emotions was I feeling? How was I triggered? What should I have done differently? How did I let this slide through? Course correction. That's all part of active vigilance. So what can you do as a parent or family member or spouse? You can recommend activities of active vigilance. You can say, you know, I went to this conference and I found out that active vigilance is the only way this is going to work for you. Would you like to know what that means? Okay? And they'll say no, and that's okay. And then you say, oh, that's okay, because I have a list right here I'm going to share with you anyway. So now notice I didn't say like, oh, just come up with something to do instead of looking at pornography, right? Or like, you know, if a thought comes in your mind, think about something else. That doesn't work, okay? We're talking about addiction here. We're talking about something that is, you know, triggering dopamine hits. Thinking about something else is much less interesting to your brain than getting a big pile of dopamine, okay? So that doesn't work for people. You've got to remain actively vigilant long before you're about to click the button, okay? All right, next one. Oh, that's active vigilance. And that guy looks a lot like me, but it's not me. I'm just letting you know. It's kind of creepy. All right, set boundaries. Now last year, I'm not going to go into spouse boundaries. I'm going to do parent boundaries. If you want to know about spouse boundaries, last year I did a hour and 15-minute talk at this conference. It's on their website. You can watch hour and 15 on spouse boundaries. Let's talk about parent boundaries, okay? Boundaries are not really designed to get people to do stuff. They're not designed to like make sure that they get into recovery. These are designed to make sure you stay sane in the process. These are for you, okay? Your own mental health. So you're trying to help somebody through addiction, and the addiction is just really warping their mind, and you start to feel nuts. Like, man, I can't get this through to you. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to think about all the ways I can try to communicate this to you. Boundaries help you stay sane. So I'll give some examples of boundaries you can set for your own sanity. You know, if you've got a child living at home, even if it's an adult child, and they're still living in your home, you know, I would say something like, we've got media rules in this home, and we don't do cell phones in bedrooms at night. We don't do computers in bedrooms, okay? That's so you can sleep at night. Now, you know, yes, they could go sneak and grab a phone or whatever, but you have set the boundary. This is what it's like to live in this home. If you get very serious about it, you may have to say, look, if you can't abide by these boundaries, you can't live here anymore. I'm really sorry. That works better with adult children, you know, teenagers. I'm sorry, I don't know where you're going to live, but good luck. You know, you took your phone in your room, it's over. But sometimes, you know, I mean, it just depends on how things go. I'm not advocating kick your kids out of the house. Okay, so let's keep going here. You can say things like, we watch TV in public, right? You can say, if you access pornography using your cell phone that I bought you, or that you bought yourself, but I still own it because I'm your parent, I'm going to have to take it until I feel safe that you're committed to recovery. That's how boundaries work. The boundaries in place until they do something fundamentally different that helps you feel safe. And it's your job to protect the kids, so you have a right to do things like that. Here's another boundary you could say. You're welcome to share your feelings about your addiction and your recovery, but if you start shifting into blaming mode, we're taking a break. I'm not going to go into the conversation where you blame me and tell me that it's all my fault, kind of thing. Okay? And that works great for spouses, for example. No matter, this is an interesting boundary. I thought of this last night. I added this in. No matter what happens, I'm going to love you. That's the boundary I'm setting. I will love you no matter what. I get frustrated. I may get upset. I may have to put a lot of consequences for my own mental health, but I'm still going to love you, and you can't stop me from loving you. You know why? Because what's really interesting is if you're stuck in addiction, sometimes you just want everyone to hate you and you want to be completely alone so you can just sit alone in your shame. And so people will actually actively try to get people upset at them. So it's like, well, nobody likes me anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter what I do. So you're going to say, sorry, that doesn't work, love you and me. Too late. Okay, it's an interesting boundary. Now, please remember that teenagers don't have fully developed prefrontal cortexes, the part that actually is logical and rational, until they're 25 to 27 years old. Okay, so all that crazy stuff you did before then, I don't know, it's not your fault, but your brain was not fully active, your computer was half on. And so you have to remember as a parent,